Get out, Mum. You're useless. Emma's voice sliced through me like a knife. Her brother, Daniel, stood by the door with his arms crossed, nodding in agreement. You can't just sit around here anymore, eating our food and doing nothing. If you want to stay here, you'll have to work. Go get a job, any job. I froze, my mop dripping soapy water on the tiled floor. My knees shook, not from age, but from the humiliation of hearing those words from the very children I carried, nursed, and fed. It had all started because I lost my small shop. I had run it for years, selling groceries and homemade pastries, but after my husband passed, things went downhill. The rent piled up, and soon I couldn't keep the business open. I had thought my children would help me get back on my feet. I was wrong. So that morning, when Emma threw the cleaning uniform at me, a bright blue shirt with the name Sparkle Cleaners stitched across the front, I thought it was a cruel joke. But no, it wasn't. If you're going to stay under our roof, you'll work, she said coldly. I got you a job at Mr. Thompson's house. You'll clean twice a week. Maybe that'll teach you some responsibility. I stared at her, my lips trembling. Emma, you can't be serious. You want your mother to be a cleaner? Daniel scoffed. At least you'll finally do something useful. My heart broke into pieces. Still, I swallowed my pride and took the job. For weeks, I scrubbed floors, polished windows, and wiped toilets, trying to convince myself it was temporary. I came home each evening exhausted, my hands smelling of bleach. My children didn't ask how I was doing. They didn't even look at me. Emma would just say, "Don't forget to wash your uniform, Mum. You smell like cleaning fluid." But one evening, something inside me changed. I overheard them laughing in the living room. She actually did it. Emma giggled. Our mother, the cleaner. Can you believe it? Maybe we should hire her for our own house next. Daniel laughed loudly. Yeah, she's finally earning her keep. That laughter. It burned. It echoed inside me until all I could feel was shame and rage. That night, I went to my room and stared at the framed photo of our family from 10 years ago. My husband had been alive then. He had built this very house with his sweat and dreams. The house was still in my name. My children didn't know that, because after their father died, I never told them the documents were never changed. I sat there for a long time, tears rolling down my cheeks, my chest heavy with pain. But beneath that pain, something else was growing, resolve. If my own children thought I was useless, maybe it was time to show them just how powerful their useless mother could be. The next morning, I put on my cleaner's uniform and went to work as usual. But when I came back that evening, I didn't just bring my mop and bucket. I brought something else. A decision that would change everything. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I quietly entered the living room, holding a brown envelope in my trembling hands. It contained the property deed. I looked around the house, my house, and whispered, "You called me useless, but tomorrow, you'll learn who really owns this roof." The next morning came, and the argument that followed was one the neighbors would talk about for years. When I told them to pack their things and leave, they thought I was joking. Emma screamed, Daniel begged, but I didn't flinch. My voice didn't shake. For the first time in years, I felt strong. "You made me clean for strangers," I said, standing tall. "Now clean your lives without me." Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. "Mum, you can't." "I just did." And with that, I pointed to the door. They had humiliated me. They had made me a cleaner. But that day, I turned the tables and threw them out of my house. The door slammed behind them. Silence filled the room. My hands trembled, but not from fear. From power. I stood in the middle of my living room, surrounded by echoes of their voices, when suddenly, there was a knock at the door. I frowned. It was too soon for anyone to be visiting. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. Standing there was someone I hadn't seen in years, someone who could change everything again. I froze at the door. The evening breeze brushed against my face as I stared at the man standing before me. "Good evening, Mrs. Brown," he said with a tired smile. My breath caught. "Mr. Thompson?" It was my employer, the man whose house I'd been cleaning for weeks. His eyes, though kind, looked troubled. He held a small envelope in his hand, and for a moment, I feared I had done something wrong at work. "May I come in?" he asked gently. I hesitated. The house was unusually quiet. Emma and Daniel's voices were gone, their laughter gone, their disrespect gone. Only silence remained. I slowly stepped aside. Mr. Thompson entered, his eyes scanning the empty living room. I hope I'm not intruding. You didn't show up for work today, and I was worried. You never miss a day. I sighed, my shoulders heavy. It's been a long day. He nodded and handed me the envelope. You left this behind last week in my kitchen drawer. I looked down. It was a small envelope with my handwriting on it. An old letter I had written to myself months ago when I was at my lowest. Inside was a simple note that read, "Don't give up. Even dust shines when the light hits it." I felt embarrassed. Oh, that. I forgot all about it. He smiled softly. You're stronger than you think, Mrs. Brown. I've seen the way you work. Always with care, even when you think no one notices. Tears welled up in my eyes. His kindness felt strange, too gentle after weeks of harsh words from my own children. Then his expression changed. If you don't mind me saying so, you look different today. Lighter somehow. I laughed faintly. Maybe because I finally stood up for myself. Good, he said firmly. People mistake kindness for weakness. I know what that's like. We sat for a while talking about life, loss, and how cruel people could be. Even those you love. It was comforting, but as he stood to leave, I saw headlights flash through the window. My heart sank. Outside I saw Emma's car. She stepped out, her hair a mess, her face streaked with tears. Daniel followed, clutching a small duffel bag. I could tell they hadn't gone far. Maybe they hadn't gone anywhere at all. Mr. Thompson, I whispered, please excuse me. He nodded and quietly stepped aside as I opened the door. Emma's voice cracked. Mum, please, we have nowhere to go. Daniel's eyes were swollen. We're sorry, Mum. We didn't mean what we said. We were just stressed. Stressed? I interrupted, my voice trembling but firm. You made your mother work as a cleaner. You laughed about it. You took my love for weakness. They both broke down crying. Emma dropped to her knees, clutching my hand. Mum, please, we're your children. Don't shut us out. We'll change, I promise. For a long time, I said nothing. My heart warred with itself. They were my children, my flesh and blood. But they had broken something deep inside me that could never be easily fixed. Finally, I spoke softly. Do you know what it feels like to clean someone else's home, knowing your own children see you as a burden? Daniel couldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Mum. We were wrong. I sighed. Sorry doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't erase the nights I cried alone. Behind me, Mr. Thompson watched silently, his expression unreadable. I looked at my children again. You need to learn what it feels like to struggle, to understand the value of humility. Until then, you can't stay here. Emma sobbed harder. Please, just one night. I hesitated, torn. My heart was soft, but my resolve was strong. Before I could answer, Mr. Thompson stepped forward. Mrs. Brown, he said quietly. If it helps, they can stay in my guest house for now. It's empty. Maybe time apart will teach everyone what they need to learn. I stared at him, surprised by his kindness. My children looked shocked too. Are you sure? I asked. He nodded. Sometimes distance heals faster than arguments. I agreed, though it broke my heart again. As Emma and Daniel followed him out into the night, I stood at the doorway, my hands trembling. They turned to look at me one last time. We love you, Mum, Emma whispered. I wanted to say it back, but the words stuck in my throat. When they disappeared into the darkness, I shut the door and leaned against it, my body shaking from exhaustion. The house felt emptier than ever. But just as I wiped my tears and turned toward the living room, I noticed something strange on the floor. A small envelope I hadn't seen before. It wasn't mine. And when I picked it up, the handwriting on it made my blood run cold. It was my late husband's handwriting. My hands trembled as I stared at the envelope. The handwriting was unmistakable. That strong, slightly tilted script I'd recognize anywhere. My husband, Richard, had always written that way. But how? He'd been gone for 5 years. The room suddenly felt colder. The walls seemed to lean in as though they, too, wanted to see what was inside. Slowly, I tore the envelope open. Inside was a folded letter, yellowed at the edges but neatly kept. I unfolded it with care, my eyes scanning the words written in that familiar hand. My dear Clara, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer by your side. I know how hard life can be when you're alone, especially with the children grown. Promise me, Clara, that you'll never let them forget where they came from. Promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel small, not even them. This house is yours. It will always be yours. I've arranged things so that no one can take it from you. If things ever go wrong, look inside the old blue box in my study, the one with the silver lock. Everything you need is there. Remember, my love, strength isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the kind that endures when others turn away. I know you, Clara. You have that strength. Use it when the time comes. With all my love, Richard. My knees nearly gave way. I sat down on the couch, clutching the letter to my chest. Tears streamed down my face. Tears I hadn't let myself cry since the day I buried him. That blue box. I knew exactly where it was. It had been sitting untouched in his old study, on the top shelf. For years, I couldn't bring myself to open it. But now, something told me it was time. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked down the hall to the study. Dust covered the shelves. The faint smell of his cologne still lingered, the one with a hint of sandalwood that always made me feel safe. My fingers traced the outline of the blue box, just as the letter said. The lock was still there. But when I lifted it, I realized it wasn't locked at all. I opened it slowly. Inside were documents, photographs, and one small brown notebook. At the very top was another envelope, this time addressed not to me, but to my children. My heart ached. I hesitated before opening it. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe it wasn't meant for me. But curiosity, pain, and love all mixed together until I couldn't resist. To my children, Emma and Daniel. If your mother ever has to stand alone, remember this. She is the reason you have a roof over your heads. She is the reason you had warm meals, clean clothes, and a home filled with love. If you ever forget that, you will lose yourselves. Honor her, or one day, you'll lose everything I worked for. I gasped. It was as if Richard had written those words for this very moment. Suddenly, everything felt heavier, but also clearer. I folded both letters carefully and held them close. I knew what I had to do next. The following morning, I drove to Mr. Thompson's house that I could see my children through the small window of the guest house. They were quiet, sitting apart, their faces pale and tired. Guilt had carved itself into them overnight. Mr. Thompson met me at the door, offering a small nod. They didn't sleep much, he said softly. I took a deep breath. I need to speak with them. When I entered the guest house, Emma jumped to her feet. Mum, we were just. Sit down, I said gently but firmly. She obeyed. Daniel looked at me nervously. I placed the two letters on the table. These are from your father. Their eyes widened. I read them both aloud. Every word, every line. My voice cracked at times, but I kept reading. When I finished, the room was completely silent except for the sound of Emma's quiet sobs. Mum, we didn't know, she whispered. We thought you'd given up on us. We thought we were helping by forcing you to do something. Helping? I asked softly. By humiliating me? By laughing at me? Daniel's voice broke. We were stupid. We just thought you'd become weak. We didn't understand what you'd been through. I sighed and looked at them both. Really looked at them. My children, who once clung to my skirt when thunder frightened them, now sat before me like lost souls. Your father believed in me, I said quietly. He believed in all of us. But you two forgot what family means. Emma wiped her tears. Please, Mum, let us come home. We'll do better. We'll make things right. Before I could answer, Mr. Thompson entered the room. He looked uneasy. Mrs. Brown, he said. There's someone outside asking for you. I frowned. At this hour? He nodded. It's a young man, says he's from the bank. Something about your husband's old accounts. I exchanged a worried glance with my children. The bank? After 5 years? I followed Mr. Thompson outside. A man in a gray suit stood beside a black car, holding a file. Mrs. Clara Brown, he asked. Yes, I replied cautiously. He opened the file and handed me a document. I believe this belongs to you. It concerns your late husband's estate. My heart skipped. Estate? Yes, he said. It appears there was a savings account under your husband's name. And it was never closed. We've been trying to locate you for months. The amount inside is quite substantial. I blinked in disbelief. Substantial? How much are we talking about? He gave a small smile. Enough to change your life, Mrs. Brown. But before I could react, before I could even breathe, the man's expression changed. He looked over my shoulder and frowned. Is everything all right? He asked. I turned around and froze. There, standing behind me, was a face I hadn't seen since my husband's funeral. A face I never thought I'd see again. It was Richard's brother, Henry. And the look in his eyes told me one thing. He knew something about that money. The house was quiet again. Not the heavy, painful silence it once had, but a peaceful one. The kind that comes after a long storm finally breaks and the sun begins to rise. Months had passed since that night when Henry showed up, trying to claim what was never his. The days that followed were long and filled with tension, lawyers, court hearings, and memories I had long buried. Henry had forged documents, trying to seize my late husband's savings for himself. He thought an old widow would be too weak to fight back. But he was wrong. I remembered Richard's words in his letter. Strength isn't loud. It's quiet. Those words became my anchor. With Mr. Thompson's help, I gathered every paper, every letter, every proof my husband left behind. The court ruled in my favor. Every cent of Richard's money rightfully came back to me. And more importantly, his name was cleared of all the lies Henry tried to spread. When it was all over, Henry stood in court, pale and defeated. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt peace. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It whispers quietly when truth wins. After that day, my life began to change in ways I never imagined. I repaired the house, our house. The peeling paint, the broken window frames, the leaking roof, all fixed. The home felt alive again, filled with the warmth it once had. Emma and Daniel came home one evening. They stood on the porch nervously, holding a bouquet of flowers and a letter. I hesitated for a moment before opening the door. Mom, Emma whispered, we don't deserve your forgiveness, but we're here to earn it. Daniel added softly, we've both got jobs now, real ones, and we've been volunteering at the shelter downtown. You taught us something we'll never forget. I looked at them, seeing not the arrogant, selfish children they once were, but two people trying to become better. I smiled gently. Come in, I said. Dinner's ready. They exchanged surprised looks. Then, like children again, they ran inside, setting the table and chatting awkwardly, as if trying to remember what family felt like. That night, we ate together for the first time in months. No shouting, no pride, just quiet laughter and forgiveness. Mr. Thompson joined us too. He had become more than an employer. He was a true friend. He often said, Mrs. Brown, you remind me that strength wears an apron, not armor. When dinner was over, I brought out the two letters, Richard's words to me, and his message to our children. I placed them on the table for everyone to see. These, I said softly, are the reasons we're here today. Don't ever forget what love and respect mean. Emma nodded, wiping her tears. Daniel held my hand and whispered, thank you for not giving up on us. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling and smiled. For the first time in years, my heart was light. I had lost much, but I had gained something even greater. Peace, respect, and a family rebuilt by truth. The next morning, the sunrise poured through my window, warm and golden. I stood by the window, watching the world awaken. Once my children had humiliated me. They made me a cleaner. But through that pain, I discovered the strength I didn't know I had. I turned the tables, not with revenge, but with wisdom, patience, and love. Now my home was not just bricks and walls. It was a story, a lesson, that would live on long after I was gone. Because sometimes, the strongest people aren't the ones who shout the loudest. They're the ones who survive, forgive, and rise again. Moral of the story: no matter how life breaks you, never let anyone define your worth. Even when the world treats you like dirt, remember, dirt is what flowers grow from. Cherry blossom,